everyone, and welcome to Esports Explore, where we get to know members of the esports industry and those affecting the field overall in a positive way. Today, I got to speak with a longtime friend and local tournament organizer here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Jessie Herb, who runs the tournament series Raise the Bar. And we talked a little bit about what it was like organizing tournaments for a local fighting game community, how he came to grow his own fighting game scene, and some of the challenges he faces in that space coming from the perspective as a player. It's a really interesting conversation for myself. One, because I know him, and it was really interesting seeing his own thought processes as he was going through describing what he thinks is an ideal tournament experience. And I also really appreciate the conversation on the basis of how we can get more people involved in esports in general, and more specifically fighting games, since that's both of our genres that we play. So I hope you enjoy this conversation, and I hope you have a great day.
I'm Jessie Herb, and I organize fighting game and Smash tournaments in Lancaster. Raise the Bar is my tournament's name.
How did you come up with the name for
I'm not great at the
it?
creative side of things for the most part. So what I did was I went to a Discord with all my friends in it, and I said, "Hey, I'm starting a tournament. It's going to be at a bar. What do I call it?" And I got a couple answers, and then I got Raise the Bar, and I said, "That's perfect. That's amazing."
What made you want to start your own tournament series? Because I'm assuming you were going to other tournaments in the area beforehand. What made you want to start running your own?
A few things. So first of all, the main melee tournament besides Raise the Bar is the Millersville Weekly, and
You mean
that's
like in your area in
yeah,
PA?
yeah, yeah, in
Okay,
Lancaster.
gotcha.
In Lancaster, it's a college weekly and it's free, which is great. I go every Friday. I love it. But uh, it does when you have a free tournament, it doesn't encourage everybody to be like serious and competitive all the time.
Hmm.
Neither does having a tournament at the bar, but that's besides the point. Uh, One competitive, like some people just I don't know need like their $5 on the line to take it a little more seriously. Two, it only goes on when school's in session. So like in the summer, everybody who actually lives here wouldn't have a tournament. So I'm like, okay, I'm out here in the summer now. I'm gonna start a tournament and run it in the summer, so there's something to do, which is something I was trying to do before Raise the Bar.
Hmm.
Uh, at Millersville, I would just ask them if I could be in a room. Eventually, they said no, so I stopped doing that.
Hmm.
And the other thing is that there are no fighting game tournaments in Lancaster. I separate fighting game and Smash just because it's fun to talk about. So if I'm talking about fighting games, I'm talking about Street Fighter and I'm talking about Tekken, DBFZ, whatever other game you want to think of. But there were no fighting game tournaments in Lancaster since I forget what it was called, but the last one was happening like a year ago, and their venue got damaged, unfortunately. So since then, there's been nothing, and like there's a pretty decent community around fighting games around here.
Yeah, I was going to say, how have you been able to see it grow since you started introducing games like Street Fighter and Tekken into Lancaster? I know there's like a big crossover for the Philly guys and they come up to participate, but how have you seen, sort of Lancaster come together under that umbrella?
It's been it's been pretty tough actually because to get started at least because one everybody was kind of scattered because beforehand tournaments are inconsistent or non-existent. So you show up, you go to a tournament for a few times, and if you're not like 100% invested in the fighting games, if the tournament stops, or even if it moves or like changes schedule, you just don't go to another tournament ever again. Like sometimes that just happens.
It's
Um,
like that extreme for folks to be able to come out to a LAN event compared to playing online.
yeah, everything has to be right. People are really finicky about wanting to actually go to a LAN event. And sorry, what was the question?
Just how have you seen
Oh,
the
right.
your
Oh, I was saying
your
grow.
tournament progressing over the year? How have you been introducing FGC folks from Lancaster into it?
Right. So what I was trying to get at is that there was no infrastructure, basically.
Hmm.
So if you think about the Smash scene has Facebook pages in every little region. Like you think like, oh, Philadelphia has a Facebook page. Like, yeah, they have a Facebook page, but so does Lehigh Valley has two, Lancaster has one, Penn
Right.
State has one. Like every college has one for Smash. So if you're like in your little region, you go to Facebook and you type in Bloomsburg Smash, you type in like Millersville Smash, and you're probably gonna find at least like 5 people who play competitive Smash. In fighting games, if you search fighting game tournaments, like they're not always well advertised, they're not always LAN. And fighting games, like there's a Philadelphia FGC page, and there was nothing for Lancaster or like, the Lancaster area with like York, Harrisburg. So we had to make a page. That was like the first thing to get it growing, was like have a place for everybody to go and for us to post our tournaments.
What was the marketing process like for it at first? Because you're sort of starting from, you know, not really working with any base materials compared to the Smash community. So what was it like advertising for Street Fighter, Tekken, trying to get everybody in the same place?
It would have been impossible for just me, because like if you imagine like there's like the group of people I know, and then there's FGC beforehand,
Hmm.
and I don't even know if like fighting game players exist in Lancaster. Uh, but one day, one of the guys in Lancaster FGC, Sam, texted me. He messaged me on Facebook because he saw I was running a tournament. He's like, "You want to put Tekken in that tournament?" Yes. And it was always something I was talking about with my roommates. Like, I can't find the Lancaster FGC. I would love to like put Street Fighter in because that's the game I'm interested in. But he said Tekken. I'm like, "Yep, let's put Tekken in." Heck yeah. So that's the one intermediary between me and the FGC that like I found, and it
Hmm.
made it all work. So you get 5 people, that this guy knows, that like fighting games. You make the page, he gets his friends to join, they get their friends to join, and all of a sudden you've got like a reasonable community where people can play.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're using the word like tournament a lot, and I think the gut reaction to when you hear the word tournament is you think of a large live event with lighting and hundreds of people. And you and I have been to FGC tournaments where that's certainly not the case. So, do you want
Yeah,
to describe like, because I think what might be sort of intimidating about that is people don't realize how casual of a thing it is. Do you want to talk on that a little bit?
yeah. You even saying that just like made me realize that people might see tournaments as something other than 5 dudes in a basement. But yeah, like a normal night at Raise the Bar is we have 30 people between 3 games, and we have like 10 to 15 man brackets. And if you go 0-2, you get some food, you eat, you watch other matches, like you watch the stream match. People like spectating is one of the most fun things. It's my pinned tweet right now, is like 20, like just 20 people spectating and like invested in the match is so fun. It makes everything better for the players and like just people who are hanging out. You can play friendlies or casuals, depending if you're a fighting game player and you want to make fun of me for saying friendlies. Uh, there's a lot to do. And then we also try and have like side brackets every once in a while. One of the most successful ones was dive kick. If you've never played dive kick before, it's a fighting game where you have 2 buttons, one jumps, and one makes your character go up, one makes your character go down and attack, and that's it. So I grabbed all the Smash players, got them off of Melee and Ultimate, and I brought them over. I said, "This is dive kick," and I said exactly what I just said. I said, "You guys are entering. You're gonna have fun." And it was like the best. It was the best side bracket I've
I
ever
can
had.
imagine. I would love to do an in-person dive kick bracket. That
Oh, it's
sounds
gonna be
great.
so fun.
I know you personally, right? And I know that you're not a very big like video game fan outside of fighting games. And something
Okay.
that I don't know if we've ever talked about is like what's sort of your interest there? Because even though you don't play like, Super Mario or Zelda, when we were roommates, I could walk into the apartment and see you grinding like Street Fighter Third Strike for 5 hours. And I was always wondering like what the connect was there for you with fighting games and why that's like your primary focus.
Yeah. So uh, the entry into it was Smash. Like I played 64 when I was a little kid. Uh, I had like I was like two consoles behind, and I had a Nintendo 64, and I'd play in my basement with my friends. Uh, got Brawl, and then so I'm like into Smash when I go into college. Get to college, Smash 4 comes out, and I pick up Smash 4 with my friends, and then our mutual friend Ulrich, he's the one that started the Millersville Smash Club,
Mm-hmm.
and that got me into like the competitive side of things, like a little less seriously with Smash 4. Um, but I think the real thing that got me hooked was that I was a very serious soccer player for a long time, and like I put really concentrated effort into getting better at soccer, and that was like my outlet for that part of myself. uh and then around sophomore year of college, uh playing soccer was just starting to be really hard on my body. Like I'd be made to run sprints like 4 miles, and like I wouldn't do anything to my body, but the next day I'd like my ankle be tweaked, my knee would be hurting. I'd go into the trainer, they're like, look, you're fine, just get back out there. Okay. But eventually it became such a pattern that I'm like, I shouldn't be grinding down my body like this, and I need to find another outlet for like that competitive side. um so I think that's what like keeps me into it, is that like it lets me express a part of myself that you can't really get as an adult, at least, right? Like if I go join a rec soccer league and I try really hard, that they're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. But if you go and look at my pinned tweet, it's that video that I was talking about earlier, and it's a guy playing a video game at a bar, and he wins. It's Tekken. He wins, and he gets up and screams, and everybody in the room is like, "Oh yeah, that's normal," and they scream with him. Like, yeah, that's great. It's amazing.
I totally agree. It's a space where you can sort of like let loose, try your hardest, and not feel like bad or ostracized about it afterwards, you know?
Yeah, and then I think like a big point that I want to include in that too is like you can try your hardest, and everybody's gonna be like, wow, that's really cool. Or like me, in like certain stretches of my life, if I'm like stressed out and I don't want to try really, really hard, I'll pick a jokey character and like get beaten bracket, and that's fine too. Like you can just kind of mess around, and like everybody does things their own way, and it's all cool.
Outside of the competitive aspect, is there anything you take from traditional sports like soccer over to esports or fighting games for yourself?
Outside of the competitive aspect,
Yeah. Like, is
um,
there anything in regard to, I know we're talking about fighting games, which is like individual one on one, but is there anything in regard to like a team aspect that you miss, in regard to a practice aspect that you miss? Anything like that?
uh, maybe not. No, I don't miss the team aspect of soccer. A little bit maybe, but the big part, or the big thing, is that like what I would have liked about soccer, the team aspect of soccer, is just like, friends and like camaraderie and getting to hang out with your friends. Like I don't miss it in the game, you
Mm-hmm.
know? Like there's plenty of strategy and technique to replace like the team aspect of soccer. And like I was also into tennis, like one-on-one sports. So it's similar. But I don't lose anything going from soccer to or team sports to like fighting games, because I go to this thing every week. and all my friends are there. Like that's the thing.
It accomplishes the same things for you.
Mhm.
Awesome. Circling back around a little bit, you came up as a casual fighting game player who eventually took it pretty seriously and started organizing tournaments. What role did, the fighting game community that you were a part of, what role did they play in tournament organizing for you? How did you collaborate with members of the community to not only, grow this scene that you have going on, but get more people involved in fighting games?
Yeah. Uh, so like what I was talking about earlier, like I can't even talk about it without talking about the rest of the community pulling their weight too, right? Like Ulrich
Mm-hmm.
starting the Millersville Smash Club, which got a bunch of people into it. Like all of my friends
Mm-hmm.
that are into fighting games got into it because Ulrich started that Smash Club. Then there's like Sam, who showed up and connected the two communities, like we were talking about. Like that's huge. And then other than that, it's like every single person that goes, you know, I rely on them to bring TVs, consoles, their friends, right? And like everyone's got their, it's a big community and everybody knows each other, but like there's obviously little friend groups as there would be in any group of like 100, people.
Mm-hmm.
So like I think those relationships are also important for keeping up interest, right? Like you have someone to personally play with at like midnight if you have a close friend, right?
Yeah,
I think that's also just huge. Like that's a pretty slept on part of it.
I think going back to the general perspective of tournament, that it's this really large thing. If you play games like League of Legends or Dota, and you might not realize how much the community members of like a smaller game like Tekken or like Blaze Blue or Street Fighter actually contribute to that space to make the game work. Um, there's always like memes made of like kids carrying 5 CRTs in their hatchback to get to a melee tournament or anything like that. End of the day, there is someone. Yeah,
I've got 3 of those.
and I know your car is full of them because I can't sit anywhere. Um,
If there's only 2, it's fine. I've got 3 of those.
yeah,
That's not enough to run any size tournament.
but
People bring stuff and they have to.
yeah, and I think like that's one of my favorite parts of it is that in some way everybody contributes to an event. It's not just some one-off thing run by a guy who collects your money at the door and then you walk in. It's a group effort from time you get there to the time you leave. And I think that's one of
Yeah.
my favorite parts of participating.
Yeah. And like everybody, there's always like 4 or 5 people who just like will stay after too and like help me clean up. Like
Yeah.
it's a big cleanup because it's in a bar and I have to get everything out, you know, every night. So people are just invested. And it's kind of like in the culture of it to take some ownership of your tournament, like your
Mhm.
local. And I think that's really cool.
We've talked a good bit about like sort of inclusivity, drawing from different scenes to get people to play fighting games. What are some barriers new players experience when getting into fighting games? Because it's a pretty niche genre that's played pretty differently from a bunch of other traditional genres. So how can we break down barriers for those new players to make like a tournament experience more accessible?
Yeah. So the way I think about it, there's like 3 barriers. Like there's the technical barrier. Like I'm going to learn to Korean backdash and Tekken. Hard. That's really hard.
Yeah.
There's the equipment barrier. You might feel like you need a fight stick. You might feel like you need a certain type of controller, uh, your own setup for the game. So you got to buy things to play sometimes, usually.
Mhm.
And then the social barrier, which I don't think people think about enough. Like when I got into Melee, uh, there was like an increased drive to get better, not because of like anything anybody said to me, but I felt like I don't want to waste people's time playing them. and people would beat me so bad that I'd be like, oh no, I'm like wasting their time. Like I feel so bad about this. And it's so dumb now that I think about, like, I can play with anybody in the region now and like take games or just beat them outright. And now I'm like that person that's better than people. And I'm like, I love it when someone walks up to me and they're like
I want to learn.
completely new. It's so cool. Even if they're not like, I want to learn. If they're just like show up, pick Roy, and they're like, I'm bad, I want to play. Play the game with me.
Another person playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been like that exact same person before, where like I can think of players when I first started playing. I'm like, oh god, don't they want to play casuals with anyone else? They're they're just getting like perfect matches every time. I'm wasting their time. They're not getting anything out of this. And then I'm sort of like in the role where you are now, where I'm better than most of the people I play with. But at the same time, I also love playing against the Roy who just picked up Melee. And those are some of my favorite matches because I love seeing like what they think of the game and like how we can learn together to get better at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, totally relatable on that front.
It's just really cool. You get excited when someone else wants to play the game that you like.
Yeah, and I think, especially for us, it's because it's such a small game too. I think League of Legends, a bunch of new players join every day, but when someone walks into your 30-person tournament for the first time and it's their first time there, like that's cool. That's another person I get to play with, another person to keep my tournament going, right?
Yeah, and it's the community aspect of it too, where like the culture is that like everybody kind of helps build this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
That like you're gonna walk in there and if you say like, I'm a new player, can you help me? Every single person will like be excited to help because they want the tournament to be good and they want as many people who like the game
Mm-hmm.
to play it. That goes for like every game, not just Melee, or it goes for like Tekken and Street Fighter. Like those guys have really been helping me getting into Tekken.
Yeah. Sort of playing off that community aspect. A lot of the games played in the FGC are typically played on like LAN or in person because we don't want to experience bad latency when we're playing, or bad network connection eating inputs or anything like that. And during COVID, that's been really tough. So, in your opinion, what does the FGC need to do to stay relevant during COVID and to keep their player base consistent and still growing?
We have to have online tournaments. Like that's like without a doubt, you have to run online tournaments, even if you don't have an ideal setup to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Melee just got rollback netcode, right? To play it online. And
which, like, to just pinpoint on real quick, that's extreme. There's major fighting games sponsored by incredible organizations that do not have rollback netcode.
Yeah, basically, if you don't know anything about it, you can play Melee online and it feels good. Like, which it wasn't the case before. It would feel like you're moving in quicksand.
Mm-hmm.
So before that came out, because it came out during quarantine, right? Before it came out, we're playing in quicksand online, but we're still playing because like people still love the game, even if it's a little bit neutered. It's not as good. You still
Mm-hmm.
play it, and that was fun. What I was doing then was I was experimenting with different formats. So for Melee, I would like pick 5 players, maybe 6 of about equal skill level, and I would say, hey, we're gonna do a round robin. I'm gonna like make graphics with your face on it. They're gonna look goofy. It's gonna be fun. People are gonna get into it and like kind of invested. Like people were like getting excited about like who was gonna win. Like each player had their own little like cheering section. and like there was a personalized aspect of it where like their personalities came through in a tournament online, where like, and that's kind of the thing that got me excited about that, because like offline their personalities are coming through, they're right there, right? But it's harder to get it to feel personal when it's online. So that's what I was going for, and people really seemed to enjoy that. Like even the players that weren't playing were hanging out in Twitch chat, so it was like a community event. Since then we have rollback netcode came out, so I'm running like actual tournaments because people are enjoying them now.
Yeah.
It feels, you don't feel like you lost to the netcode. You feel like you lost to the other person when you're playing rollback.
Mm-hmm.
So I can run these tournaments pretty much like normal, and people get to feel like they're competing, and it's a fun time. The issue comes is that there's not a spectating mode anymore. So on the new one, it's way better, but there's not a spectator mode yet. The developer's working on it. So I have to have the player stream to Discord, and then I stream the Discord stream. And that's like its own set of challenges.
And that's like the only way to prevent delay, pretty much.
It's the only way, yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's really choppy. The cool thing is though, like the thing like records inputs, so you can play it back perfectly later. So if it's a really choppy match, sometimes I'll have the players send me the file of all the inputs, and I'll play it back on mine and record that and like dub commentary over it. It's fun.
Do you want to tell me about your first ever tournament experience and what that was like for you as a player?
Oh, it was a Smash 4 tournament in the basement of one of the dorms at my college that made happen. So going into, oh God, it's so typical. I hate it. But going into it, I was playing with my buddy, and we never played competitive Smash before, but we both played Smash, and we're beating each other up. We're like, this game came out a week ago. We're the best. We're clearly the best.
The big fish, small pond scenario is so prevalent in like every fighting game.
We've been playing for a week. It's a new game. Nobody can be good at it yet. We've been putting lots of time in. We must be the best.
It's obvious.
I show up. I get beat up. I'm like, oh, that's how good you can be at things. You can actually be good at these. And there's like fundamentals that transfer between games.
Yeah.
And that was like, learning that was like the thing. I think that at least hooked me for another like 2 months before I figured other things out. Mm-hmm. But the fact that like there are fundamentals that transfer between these games, and like if you're good and you're playing someone who doesn't know yet, you're gonna win. Like you could be good at this. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's a cool revelation to have for sure. You know, speaking on that first tournament experience, and now you organizing tournaments now, what are some challenges in tournament organizing that the average participant may not be aware of, or maybe things you weren't even aware of at your first Smash 4 tournament?
It's like, it's a lot. So like one of the first things we talked about was that loss of interest if you're not consistent. Mm-hmm. So first venue I get, we're at a bar, and it's a great venue, and like love the owners, everything's cool, but we're not a huge priority because we're getting 10 people in there and it's a big bar. So like they're not too worried if like they book a big event over us and they're like, oh, come back next week. Oh, okay. Lose 2 players forever. Like it felt so catastrophic.
And we're joking about that, but that's what happens.
It's serious. No, yeah. It's real. It's real. The guy would walk up to me, and it's like, I know that this is going to happen, and I feel it coming. So the guy walks up, and he's like, hey, we booked like a big band. They're going to get a lot of people in here. You guys are out this week.
Well, that, and especially like the 2 players leaving and just like not coming back, I think a lot of people would think to themselves like, oh, they'll show up next week.
But that's where I'm going.
They're probably not going to.
That's where I'm going, because the guy walking up to me the whole time, it's like, it feels awful, because I'm like, if there's someone that this was their first tournament, they're just not going to show again. They're like, whatever, go on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's a huge bummer. So like consistency is huge. And even like being as responsible as possible, like I never missed a week on my end. We missed weeks. We lost players because of the venue. And then when I had to switch venues to our current venue, which has been amazing to us, Springhouse, they have not canceled on us at all. We've been there every week when COVID's not around, obviously. But when we switched venues, we lost a regular fighting game player. One of the first Tekken guys. Just, I have not seen him since, because he just never joined the Facebook page or Discord. So like his connection to the community was like showing up to the old venue, you know? And if it's not at the old venue, he has no idea how to find us or like enough drive to find us at this point. Right. So that's one huge thing, is like it has to stay consistent. The other thing is I have to make people feel confident that I'm going to have their best interests in mind, and like, one, make it a good place to go, and two, make it a good experience, like run it well. So like there's some legitimacy that you have to build up. Like my first tournament was in the basement, or like the first tournament I ran was in my basement, and I invited like 10 people on a Facebook chat to play Melee, and I gave the winner strawberry lemonade Pop-Tarts because I didn't like the flavor. And I just did that. Like, some people probably wouldn't think that that's very legitimate, and you probably can't keep doing that with success, right? It's a bit of a house party, not really a tournament.
Right.
So
I think that part's important though, because there's a lot of tournaments that pop up and market themselves as a weekly, and they last maybe a month, and then you never hear from them again.
Yeah, everybody who plays a fighting game, at least a lot of people who are like big parts of the community, have thought to themselves before, I want to start a tournament. But they don't think of like how consistent you have to be in every single aspect of it. Like, it has to happen every week. It has to be in the same place every week. You have to get the VODs uploaded to YouTube, saved to Twitch. You have to make pictures every week. You have to get the Smash GG uploaded. Like, everything that goes into the tournament, it feels like you lose that little bit of credibility if you're late on anything, or it doesn't happen, which is worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, this has to keep going. It has to be perfectly consistent at all times.
Sort of tying things up, speaking about different communities that we've talked about, how people get into fighting games specifically, from your perspective, why should people get into fighting games?
I don't think there's one right reason to get into fighting games. So I'll just, like, in a very general sense, just to express yourself, whether you want to have fun, you want to play a goofy character, you want to feel a competitive drive and put that towards something. Do you just want to hang out with your friends and like press buttons? It's whatever, you know, like there's all these reasons, and those are all great reasons to do it. And I think you should just, if you have your own, you should follow through on it.
Awesome. I think that's a positive note to leave it off on. Thank you for taking some time to talk to me today. Are there any social media handles you want to plug real quick?
Yeah, we're at RTB Lancaster on Instagram and Twitter. Our Smash Twitch stream is twitch.tv/raise_the_bar. And if you want to find our fighting game tournaments, it's the same thing, but you add FGC at the end on Twitch.
Very cool. Well, thank you for your time today, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
All right. Thanks, Jesse. Bye-bye.